Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Simple Nourished Living podcast. I'm Martha McKinnon, and this is my partner and brother, Peter Morrison.
Hi there.
Hi, how you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Happy to be
Good.
here.
We're still here.
Yeah. So, we're still here. We're still showing up. We're not going to give up, right? It's not our style, even when it's uncomfortable. So today, this is episode, I think, 9, possibly.
I think that's right.
Yeah, and we have a whole spreadsheet. Thank you, thank you. A lot of our readers submitted questions and topics and ideas, and so we're going to share one of those many question topics from one of our submitters today. But before we get to that, you know me, like what's going really well in your world? What's new? What's good?
It's not new, but I guess it's good. It was a learning experience. I played in that pickleball tournament.
Uh-huh.
I guess it was about a week ago.
Okay.
Um, it was a new person. I mean, I've been playing with locally, but we had never played a tournament before. It was fun. It was a big tournament, a lot of people there. It was a beautiful day, beautiful weather. Um, my mom and my other sister came out to cheer us on. We won a few games, lost more games than we won, but it was not the outcome we wanted, but it was fun, and
Uh-huh.
it's just kind of a learning experience, as most things in life are. So.
Right. So I really think this is kind of analogous to the whole like anything, right? Anytime you're trying to learn anything new, anytime you're trying to move yourself forward, right? Whether it be losing weight or me like trying to learn Spanish or you like challenging yourself around pickleball, it's a learning experience and we've got to figure out how to enjoy the journey, right? And
And I think to get there, you kind of have to let go of the outcome
mm,
to some degree.
yeah,
If you have your mind set on you're only going to be happy or um, appreciate if X happens, but Y happens instead. I mean, you still have to give yourself credit, and that you showed up, that you tried. So yeah, there's something about that. I don't know what it is, but there's something about, for me, letting go of the outcome and appreciating the journey is.
it's about the process. And
Hmm.
I think that's very analogous to the journey we're talking about here. We get so hung up, I think, on a number on a scale or an expectation, and we think everything's going to be magical. Like, when that happens or when we reach that goal, that achievement. But the truth is, it's, I mean, the truth is that it's not, I mean, it's still you showing up right now in this new place. And if you were miserable the whole time you were trying to get there and you tortured yourself to get a number on a scale, then it's not gonna, I don't think, be sustainable. And you're not going to be any happier, I don't think, when you get there than you were being miserable. It's kind of silly to think that we can be miserable all the way along a journey and then show up happy,
Hmm.
right? I think you got to be happy. You got to be happy and enjoy the journey and see it as a process of learning and unfolding. It seems crazy to think that we're going to be miserable until we get there, or we're going to give up, right? Or forget this, it was too hard. Like I know you with your pickleball, if you didn't reach, if you had set an expectation that you had to reach a certain number of games won, and if you didn't get there, like forget it. Like
Hmm.
who's the loser in that, right?
Right, right.
And it's the same way with me with Spanish. I mean, my Spanish it's a very slow process, but my new and good is that I showed up. There's an opportunity to take a Spanish class here once a week. There's two or three ladies who show up, and I've joined that class this week, and so now it's another opportunity to work on Spanish and to meet a couple of new people and to continue moving forward beyond just my Duolingo. So I'm
Is it
patting
like an
myself.
immersion type course where you
Oh,
only
it's just
speak Spanish?
No, well, no, well, she tries, but no, it's 2 hours, and so and we practice grammar, we play games. She talks to us in Spanish, so there's a little more listening and conversation maybe than I would get in Duolingo, and also just being with other people, and so it's a step up from what I was doing. It's not like total immersion, but it's moving in the right direction, slowly, slowly, slowly.
Awesome.
Yeah. So good for you, and good for you for enjoying your tournament and for
Well, and
continuing
good.
on.
Well, thank you. And like I said, it's just a process to get to the point where, you play again. It's sort of like you and your Spanish lessons. It's like, well, if I don't win, I still want to. I would rather play a tournament or a match against better players to try to increase my own ability
Right? Because
than
like,
win a tournament where I'm playing people who are not. I
well, how fun would it be to show up every week and like beat people who are much less adept than you are?
right, right, not
How
fun at
long
all.
how long is that going to be fun? You
Right.
know, it's just you want to be challenged, and but I think I think that what I've learned from all my reading around like change and behavior change is that there's a sweet spot in there. You want to be slightly challenged, but not like overwhelmingly challenged. So
Sure,
you got to
sure.
find that place where you're working and but you're not feeling totally overwhelmed. For example, if you showed up in like a totally like if they were much much better than you, that wouldn't have been fun, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if they were much much not as good as you, that wouldn't have been fun. There's like that sweet spot where you're being challenged, but in a realistic way.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's again analogous to what we're talking about here around like weight loss, healthy eating. It's like make realistic expectations for yourself, so that you can feel a little bit challenged, but not totally like overwhelmed and defeated. If every day you're waking up feeling defeated, then you set your goals too high, right? Because you want to set milestones and goals for yourself that are achievable, and that's going to make it again much more sustainable for the long run.
Absolutely. So, shall I read the question or the
Yeah.
comments or the suggestions?
Yeah, so this is multi-part, so you may have to keep me back on track with this because there's a lot in this question comment.
So, this comes from a reader, L, and they write, I find reminders of our accountability helpful, shedding light on the excuses we give ourselves, reminders about portion control, sharing insights on the role of consistency and good habits. Good intentions are not enough. We have to do the work. Some looking for some pointers on how to stop the negative thought processes.
Okay,
Yeah.
so there's a lot there, and I think I might start with the negative thought processes first because it's most in my mind, having heard it last. So I don't think, I mean, and I'm doing a lot of reading right now around this topic of thought and thinking, and I'm having a lot of insights around it, and I think that what I'm learning is very help. I think I can help people maybe with as I'm learning, but I think that what I'm learning about thinking and because I tend to be an overthinker, is that we can't really necessarily like thoughts come in, thinking comes in, thinking happens. We can't necessarily control what thoughts will come into our head or what we're thinking about. What's really powerful, I think, is to understand that it's just a thought and that it is just thinking, and that we can sometimes get pulled into our thoughts and believe they're true, but they're not. I mean, we can think a lot of things that aren't true, and so when it comes to negative thinking, I think where I struggled for a long time was believing that someday if I kept doing the work and I kept meditating and reading and trying to improve myself and getting on my yoga mat and studying the Bible, and that suddenly there would be no more negative thoughts in my head, and I was in this struggle to overcome my thinking and what I've come now to understand with about a year now of meditation and reading on this topic is that thoughts are thoughts and they're going to come and go. It's sort of like they talk a lot in meditation about you're the sky and your thoughts are the clouds. Thoughts will come and go, but you're the thinker. You're not the thought. And this has been really powerful for me to understand and to just give myself a break around it. So the negative thinking that comes in now feels much less intense because now I don't try to fight it. I don't try to argue with it. If suddenly a thought comes in like, you're totally stupid and who do you think you are to having a podcast? Who do you think you are? And I have this negative thought. I just like, oh, there goes that thought again. And I just sort of let it go. And pretty soon you're onto some other thought, like, what am I going to have for dinner? Or, I wonder how my deviled eggs will turn out that I'm going to bring to a potluck soon. So that I think can be very helpful. Instead of thinking that you have to overcome your thoughts, you can just see them for what they are. They're just thoughts. And just because I think it doesn't mean it's true. And just see how that works for you and see how that resonates to just give yourself a little space around it. You can also just, counter your thoughts with every time you have a negative thought, just, counter it with a positive thought, So there's lots of ways to play with that. But my real suggestion where I'm having a lot of success right now is to just don't try to fight with them and just let them come and let them go. There's a saying somewhere in the world of meditation and all this is that an uninvited guest like soon leaves. And so if you think of these thoughts as just come running through your mind, and if you don't engage the thought and if you don't like try to fight it or beat it up and you just kind of let it pass, pretty soon it's just like gone. And you can just move on to something else. So that would be my suggestion around negative thinking to see if that provides some help. Do you have other thoughts, Peter, around how you handle like negative
No,
thoughts?
but I was just
Gavin?
wondering like what advice you might give or suggestions or ideas like, you had a brownie or you ate something where,
Oh, okay.
maybe you felt, and so maybe you felt like you didn't need it, or maybe you had two brownies and you maybe felt like you overdid it somewhat, and you're sort of beating yourself up where it's still a thought, but it was sort of
But it's a
the
thought tied
result.
to a specific behavior versus just a
Correct.
random thought like, oh,
Correct.
you're like just the random thought coming in, the thought tied
Right.
to something that you did that now you're beating yourself up for.
Right.
Yeah, and this is very common in the world we're talking about. And my counter to that is and again, because we can all have very, very critical, very, very mean voice. I mean, I have an inner mean girl who's not as mean as she used to be. But so we can all relate to that, this like mean voice who's constantly beating ourselves up and why did you do that? And that was stupid. And you have no self-control and you're never going to get where you want to be. And I think what's really been helpful for me around that voice is this concept of learning not to talk to myself in such a mean way, and always thinking like if somebody came to me, my best friend came to me and was explaining, I just I screwed up and I ate two brownies and I'm such a loser and I'm never gonna meet my goals. What would I tell my friend? Like how would I tell her she was a loser? What would I say to her? I would say, give yourself some slack. I mean, it's brownies. It's not the end of the world. I would be kind and I would say, well, what do you think? Maybe have a conversation around it. Like, well, why do you think you ate more than you wanted to? And ask a few questions and say, I would try to start talking to myself the way I would talk to my best friend or to somebody I really cared about, and to offer that same kind of compassion empathy and understanding. And I think that's magical because it just, it takes so much of the power and the venom out of what we're doing to ourselves.
And it's true. I think if somebody came to us looking for support and help, you would not beat them down. You would do what you can to help
Right?
lift them and
Right. And
help
the
make them see it's not a life changing, decision.
right. So that's so
Yeah,
true. I mean, so we went with our friends, with people who are struggling, we help them see that it's not, again, it's not life threatening, right?
threatening. Yeah,
It's not life threatening, and it's so what? You ate too much. And I always used to ask this because this would come up a lot in my Weight Watchers meetings. People would say, "Well, I ate a brownie," and my first response would be, because I think this is can help us change too, is like, did you enjoy it? Was it good? Because so many times we're eating it, but we're not even letting ourselves enjoy it. So first thing is, if you're going to eat something indulgent, at least give yourself the opportunity to really savor it and enjoy it, on one level. And then if you feel like, well, you overdid it, again, give yourself grace around that. It happens to everybody. And tomorrow is your next meal. That's the cool thing about this space, is that you always have an opportunity to make a new choice in your next meal. In a few hours you're going to be hungry again, and you get to practice again. So it's a practice. But the self-kindness has been very, very helpful for me. I know, because like I said, I used to have a mean girl who was much, much meaner, much more vicious than the one who's left in my world today.
right. So again, they also asked about reminders with portion control, insights on the role of consistency in good habits, and good intentions are not enough, and
Right. So
reminders of accountability.
right. So again, because like anything, when you're wanting to change, when you're wanting to learn something new, when you're wanting to
Start a podcast.
start a podcast, learn a new skill, you have to do the work, right? We could sit there together. I mean, and again, tomorrow, right? We could expect that we're only going to be happy if we're perfect. We might decide we're never going to even try. But the truth is, you just have to try, show up, and do your best. But you have to actually try, and you have to show up. Because I think one of the most dangerous words can be tomorrow. Like, oh, I screwed up today. I woke up on the wrong side of the bed. I didn't have time. I mean, there's just always a million excuses. So you really have to look at yourself and be honest about the excuses that you're using that are preventing yourself from getting started, or for showing up, or for doing what it is you can do on any given day. So you have to really figure out how to get started. And the suggestion around that, all the teaching around habit change and what really works, is that start gentle and start small, and think about, how can I make whatever it is I'm trying to accomplish? Like portion control was mentioned here. Like, how can I make it easier? How can I make it more satisfying? How can I make it like more fun, more interesting, more, what's the other one from James Clear? Obvious, to like portion control. What are the things that I can do to make it like less overwhelming? And one tip that I have, that I learned back from the book Mindless Eating, which we're going to need to explore in greater detail because it had so much wisdom for me, was to look at the size of your dishes. And I actually went out and bought some smaller dishes, because control became much easier when you were eating off, if you're eating cereal in a reasonable size bowl, versus some of these dishes now are just tremendously huge. So think about what you can do for portion control to make it easy on yourself. downsizing your dishes is huge. I remember my former mother-in-law, we would get together for Sunday dinner quite often, and everybody would have a dinner plate, except she ate her dinner on a salad plate. And it was just a natural way to eat less in a way that didn't look meager. So her plate looked just as full as somebody else's, but she was eating less and satisfied. So the science shows that when you eat from a portion that looks generous, then you're more satisfied. So that's one really tip that's helped me around portion control. Another tip around portion control that I instituted again as a result of mindless eating is what we call dish and dine. So we don't serve family style. We stopped serving family style a long time ago. We keep the food in the kitchen. We put it on our plate. The only exception might be salad or vegetables or something maybe you want to eat a little more of. That you might put those on the table, but to just keep it in the kitchen, and it's called sort of dish and dine, and you eat and you enjoy it, and then you wait, such that if you think you need more, you're going to have to get up and actually go into the kitchen to get more. Versus what I would do if it was just in front of me, family style would be scooping a little more if you're sitting around, having conversation. So that can be helpful around portion control. Other tips around portion control.
I was thinking it's along the lines of what you were just saying about how you serve it, but not eating, like if you're having a sandwich and chips for lunch, don't put the bag of chips on the table. Put a handful or however many chips you want actually on your plate with your sandwich.
Absolutely. That's a big one. Like, don't be eating out of the
Out of the,
container. Put the portion in a dish, and ideally sit down and eat it while you're paying attention and you're not distracted. Like, don't be snacking while you're checking your email, because you're gonna eat it without even enjoying it or really even realizing that you're doing it. So yeah, put the handful of chips, like you said, on your plate. Don't be leaving the bag. And that's true of anything that you're reaching in and grabbing for. You're much better off, to take their one or two cookies out of the cookie jar, out of the box, stepping away, putting the box back away, and sitting down and actually enjoying them. That can be a really big portion control help. Do you have other thoughts and things you do around portion control?
I've seen this is not me personally, but I've seen there are, like, I don't know what you'd call it, like a thing you put on your plate that you put your meat, your vegetable, your starch, and then it doesn't really measure, but it sort of guides you in quantity, I think.
So it's almost like a little serving template. It's like a little silicone template that you put on that, then you can put your portions right in those spaces. Other people will say, like, I'm not going to let my food touch, if it's a really big plate. So you can play with downsizing the amount that you're eating. One good tip that we've talked a lot about in Weight Watchers through the years, when you go to a restaurant, because restaurant portions are typically just oversized, was to ask for your to-go container as soon, with your meal. Please bring me my to-go box with my meal. And then you would just take the portion that you did not want to eat and put it in your to-go container and put it aside and just eat your portion. Another thing that Brad and I do a lot now when we go out is to share an entree. So we might each get like a salad and then share the entree, just again to make, if we don't want to be bringing home leftovers. That's another tip around portion control in restaurants. So there are those are some of the big ones.
Yeah, we've been trying to use smaller dishes.
How's that working?
It is good, especially for lunch. I know several people have wrote into the website where their husband or somebody might be ill or severely underweight, and they're doing a lot of cooking trying to help them, and they're struggling as a result. And I'm in a situation where I'm very active, probably than a lot of people, and certainly my partner. But so, and I tended to make like lunch would be just quantity would be based on my appetite,
Sure.
and it would often be too much. So a request was made to just cut back on portion size. So if I make a sandwich or a wrap for lunch, I'm not using the big dinner plate. I'm using like a small, more like a bread plate almost or something, just to put the sandwich on. And it's a good reminder for me too, because
Yeah.
even though I'm burning more, oftentimes the quantity I was making, it was just too much even for me. So
Our eyes can be bigger than our stomach, for
yeah.
sure. And there's been studies that show, like, if you go out and look at, like, to antique shop, if you go out to, like, antique shop where you'll see old antique dishes, they're so much smaller. I mean, over time, I mean, we're creating dishes now that can hardly even fit in the dishwasher. You know, they're so gigantic. And you go look at antique dishes, and the dinner plate really looks like the size of a today's salad plate. You know, things are so much. So when you think about why are we most so much bigger than previous generations? I mean, that's only one example that we've let our portions just keep getting bigger and bigger. And there's so many examples of this that just are so interesting to me. You know, when the Hershey bar came out, it was like a 1 ounce. It was like the size of those little mini candy bars that you get at Halloween when it first came out. And there's all kinds of examples of this. Like when Coca-Cola first launched, you know, Coca-Cola in a bottle, it was 8 ounces. It wasn't, 64-ounce big gulp. And so, cookies, when you look at a recipe for like chocolate chip cookies in a really old Joy of Cooking cookbook, it'll tell you that it makes 100 chocolate chip cookies. You look at the recipe, the more recent version of the Joy of Cooking, same recipe, and it might tell you that it makes 24 to 48 cookies. So everything, in every way you think about it, just keeps getting bigger. Bagels, you think about what a bagel was. I mean, back, in the 60s or 70s versus these things that are as big as your head, now. And so, and that becomes, if that's all we see, that becomes our normal. We eat these cookies now from these bakeries and stuff that are like the size of what 5 or 6 cookies would have been a few generations ago. And
Yeah,
so,
there's a dessert on Simple Nourished Living. It's a bars or squares recipe, and I know
yeah,
you wrote up about on all recipes a similar recipe is, I think it's like 12 or 16 bars, and I think it's in a 9 by 13 pan, and it's
yeah,
like this should be like 24 or 36
right.
servings.
Right. And so that's what's happened over time, because now we see what's like what would have been a reasonable portion a couple of generations ago, and we think it's meager. We think it's too small, because everything's changed. The way we see things has changed just because of everything around us has gotten bigger.
Portion distortion.
Portion distortion is real. And so, and I think the more you know that, the more understanding you have, the more comfortable you can get with backing off and just testing yourself. And one thing that I also do is, like, when I'm going to have a sweet treat, like, always order the small. Just get in the habit, when you're going to have the ice cream cone, like the 1 scoop, not the 4 scoops, and all of these things, so that you don't have to totally do away with these treats, but we need to learn to make them, a more reasonable amount, which would have been just typical,
Right.
in our grandmother's generation. So that can be real helpful to just wrap your brain around it, and to make it easy. Just the downsizing the dishes has been magical for me, because it just doesn't, it's easy. I don't have to worry about over pouring the cereal or the yogurt or the cottage cheese or whatever. I've got these really pretty smaller bowls for those kinds of foods. And often, like you said, I'll serve lunch or dinner on like a salad size plate. Or we also have these smaller bowls now that we're using more and more, for our entree, which is it's just less space to fill up. And so that's perhaps helped around portion control. So we've talked about negative thoughts. We've talked about accountability. We talked about portion control. What else was Elle asking about, Peter?
Shedding light on excuses we give ourselves.
Okay.
I don't remember.
Yeah. So is that so? What I can think of dozens of excuses I give myself. Like, what kind of excuses do I give myself when I deserve that? That's like a classic one, right? It's like I had a bad
I
day.
earned it.
I
Yeah.
earned it. I mean, that's really dangerous when I think when you're exercising. I mean, I remember days in California where I was a really, really at an unhappy place in my life. But I would basically, and I was not very active, but if I could gin up the energy to take the dog around the block, then I would reward myself. I'm not kidding you. I would reward myself with a Haagen-Dazs ice cream bar. You know, I don't even know how many points one of those would be, but they're probably, what, 300 calories easy? Do you know how far you have to walk to burn off? You know, I'm totally intrigued by those studies. Like how many hours on the treadmill would it be, right? Because typically when I work out on the treadmill, I end up burning enough calories to justify a small apple, you know, not a big chocolate covered Haagen-Dazs bar. So one of my classics is like, I earned it or I deserve it. So that's one that I tend to use a lot. I mean, I've said often that for me, part of this journey in reining in my accountability and just getting to where I wanted to get to, I feel like I have an inner spoiled child who she wants what she wants, and she's going to stomp her feet and have a little hissy fit. And she just like this, like, I want it, I deserve it, give it to me now. And I've had to just tell that spoiled child, because again, if I had a child, I wouldn't want to spoil the child, right? And it's like, well, no, tomorrow, or you know, or that's something we do. I've made rules around chips, for example. You talk about chips. Typically, I have, you know, it's like, well, on the days that I have a sandwich, then if I want, I can have a serving of chips, but I can't. But I don't allow myself to have chips just willy-nilly whenever spoiled little Martha Jean decides, you know, she wants potato chips, and if she can't have them, she's going to have a hissy fit. You know, it's like, no, we're not having a sandwich today. We're having a salad, so we're not going to have chips at this meal. So that's been helpful for me to just say that I have this child, and sometimes I just have to delay the gratification and say, no, maybe we'll have pizza. I want pizza. And well, no, we have dinner in the crock pot, but I'd really, no, we're going to have this, and maybe on Friday. And then oftentimes, you know, we forget, you know, by Friday, you know, you're on to something else. So learning how to just, in a nice way, not a mean way, but just to set boundaries around these expectations or these demands from that inner child. I think I've found to just like to talk that person down and say, no, I'm sorry, not today.
I think some other excuses might be created around times when early in the day you might not stay on track as much as you thought. You might sort of slip up with your diet or eating, and then you just sort of say, well, you know, my day is shot anyway. It's gonna be a free for all. I'll just sort of start again tomorrow. So I think oftentimes we allow ourselves where maybe it might be better to sort of catch yourself and say, well, okay, well, I slipped up at lunch. I'm gonna have a lighter dinner.
Right. So we learn to compensate, and again, you don't want to. Right. So we're going to learn compensation skills versus throwing in the towel. Like if we're going to throw in the towel every time we don't act the way we think we're supposed to perfectly act and just like give up and throw in the towel, how far are we going to get in life? Right. So we have to learn to just say, yeah, okay, so I didn't eat breakfast perfectly. You know, and that can happen to me sometimes. Like on Sundays, sometimes we'll go out to breakfast, and I'll order the omelet, but I often want Rod to he can order the combo, which brings pancakes, because I want a little bit of pancake. And sometimes I'm more into his dish than I should be, right, with the syrup and everything. So, okay, so do I beat myself up and say, oh, I really only meant to have 2 bites of pancake, but I really ate half his pancake. So now, game on, you
Right.
know? No, you say, okay, so I ate a few more bites than I should have. So now we'll compensate, and we'll think about what we're gonna have for dinner. And oftentimes, again, like when we really start to get in tune with, which I think we want to ultimately get to, is this hunger directed eating. Because we ate more, chances are we're not going to be like if we're really tuning in, we won't be as hungry later if we can really calm ourselves down and say, we'll eat again when we're hungry, not just because it's lunchtime or because we feel like we should be eating. So tune into your hunger, and also just again compensate. Yeah, we ate a little bit too much at breakfast, so we'll cut it a little back at lunch, but we're not going to just throw in the towel, game on, and start tomorrow, because that's just a no-win
Mm-hmm.
proposition. And I've been
Mm-hmm.
there. I mean, the reason that I do feel like I can share here honestly is been there, done that, right? I mean, absolutely. So that's another good excuse. So again, we just have to learn about ourselves, be aware of the excuses we tend to use, and figure out how to like counter those in a loving way. Again, we're not beating ourselves up. We're not bringing up the mean voice. We're not shaming ourselves. But we have to get real and get honest and know about the games that we play with ourselves. I mean, the more we sit here, the more thoughts I'm having about old games that I used to play with myself. And another old game I used to love to play around Halloween, even though we maybe got 3 trick-or-treaters, was to have to buy my favorite Snickers bars, right, for Halloween candy. And it's like, I told myself I was buying them for the trick-or-treaters, but that wasn't
Who you knew weren't going to show
who
up.
I knew weren't going to show up, right? So, yeah, oh my gosh, don't even get me going on the games and the excuses we can play. But we got to just call ourselves, start being real with ourselves, start acknowledging it, make fun of it, make light of it. And so, I mean, so yeah, and learn and just change. Like when you get serious, it's like you start changing your behavior because you just don't want the Snickers bars around anymore. You don't want, like, another great tip I learned back in Weight Watchers was leave the temptation at the grocery store, or wherever you're first having the temptation. Don't bring it home, and be tempted again and again and again, until it's gone. So you can choose to just say, like, no, I'm going to leave that in the store at the store this week. And that way I don't have to worry about every time I open the pantry, it's staring me in the face. Other excuses you can think of? Any other excuses that come to your mind that you might have used?
Nothing's coming to mind, but I really like the idea of the games we play for a potential future
Podcast. Yeah.
podcast.
Because we do play games with ourselves, right? Totally. Yeah. That would be a good one. Anything else that Elle asked, or have we addressed all of her?
I think we've covered it all.
Cool. Okay. I thought that was, thank you again, Elle, for that
Mhm.
submission, because that felt really honest, because I could just relate to all of the aspects of what you were talking to. So I hope this helps provide some, insight and guidance around those challenges. And for those of you who have tuned in today, if you enjoyed what we were sharing, we would love to have you hit that like and subscribe button. We're all very new to this. If you have comments around the games that you've played, the excuses that you've used, other tips and suggestions around portion control, or tips for Elle, leave those in the comments. And if you have ideas for future podcasts, please leave those as well.
Great conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for being here. And we'll talk again soon. Bye bye now.
Have a good day.